What is up, guys? It's your boy Rick Kakis, and today we've got some brand spanking new Destiny 2 news, courtesy of the Bungie weekly update that has just gone live, revealing official information. And so, let's get started. But just before we do...
What are you doing?
What's it look like I'm doing? Getting ready for the buff bundle.
No, what are you talking about?
You didn't hear? Manscaped said they took one look at me and they're instantly sending me the buff bundle. So obviously,
the buff bundle's behind you.
It's a bunch of hygiene stuff.
Yeah.
What are you saying? My hygiene isn't up to...
Look at you! Look at that!
There's been a lot of games coming out. I haven't had a lot of time to...
No, you need to go try that buff bundle right now.
Okay. Whew, that's a lot better. Let me tell you, the body buffer and the body wash were doing work. This thing's scrubbing, it's cleaning, it's exfoliating, and it's doing hard labor against that gamer grime. If you want the buff bundle, you get the body buffer and 2 body washes. That's gonna last you like a year if you're a normal person. If you're a Destiny PvP sweatlord, maybe a whole season it'll last you. But if you want to get all this, guys, simply click the link down below and you're gonna get 20% off your purchase and free shipping. I know for a fact some of you need this, okay? Click that link. Alright, now first things first, what's been going on in-game this week? Well, by far the biggest thing is that at weekly reset, Grandmaster Nightfalls went live. Now, this is unusually early into the season, and that's because we didn't have a power level increase, and that also means that the node to select whatever different strike you want to do and potentially earn your Conqueror title in a single day, that is not active. So you are just at the mercy of the weekly available strike, which happens to be the Light Blade. Literally one of the hardest, arguably the hardest Grandmasters in the entire game, and Bungie just gave an extra dose of cyberbullying by putting Arc Threat to increase incoming arc damage within this Grandmaster, and of course, the boss does nothing but absolutely yeet out massive amounts of arc damage. However, I did do a guide showcasing some great Nightfall loadouts and a bunch of tips for the strike itself, so you guys can get it done. And that, of course, is linked up above. However, at that same Tuesday weekly reset, something else went down, and that's the fact that you didn't get to play Grandmaster Nightfalls until hours after you were supposed to, because, as you can see right here, Destiny 2 went down for maintenance, and that maintenance was extended, and extended again, and delayed again, and it took hours longer than normal for people to actually gain access and play the game at this Tuesday weekly reset. Now, this definitely caused a firestorm on Twitter because this is not an isolated incident. Ever since the launch of Season of the Deep, that was delayed several hours before you can play. And we've had these delays in maintenance and really horrendous stability issues, tons of issues with people not being able to log in and getting error coded out of the game. I've seen so many clips of people trying to do their flawless dungeon runs being ended by an error code, which should never happen, of course. And so again, this has really built and built and built, and the community was very upset when this happened yet again. Now, I wanted to give Bungie a chance to respond. These weekly TWABs, or TWIDs I guess they're called now, are often a time where Bungie talks about, potentially why they're having these issues and all that stuff. So, did they? Well, looking it over, nope. So get ready for a rant video coming later, guys. But in any event, let's move on to that brand new information within the TWAB. First things first, it is Pride Month, and Bungie has released a new emote and a new transmat. You can see the emote right here, and the codes, if you want to redeem that in-game, are on the screen right now. Now, moving on from there, guys, although, as I said, the communication regarding these server issues has not been great, something that was great involving communication is that recently Bungie actually hosted a Twitter thread where they asked players for feedback, and I did a video covering some of the most popular replies to that thread. Check it out, it's linked up above. But in this TWAB, Bungie actually took the time to respond to a lot of the different questions they were getting in that thread. So let's go over them. In the abilities section, the question is, in PvE, ability uptime is very high and has increased despite global changes to base cooldown. What are the current thoughts on the ability energy economy? Well, the gameplay team answered that saying, the ability energy economy is something we're always evaluating and adjusting. With the massive number of sources that can grant ability energy, it's always an area of concern. While we don't have any sweeping changes to announce today, this is a continued area of focus for us. Destiny's identity is fundamentally rooted in space magic power fantasies, but we don't want ability uptime to balloon to a point where the power spike from active abilities ceases to become a spike and becomes the norm. Alright, fair enough. Moving on from there, with aspects, armor mods, and artifact perks that rely on players being able to throw or destroy their created tangles, the cooldown can feel frustrating. What's the intent behind the tangle cooldown time, and are there any plans to revisit it? Bungie says that in Season 22, next season, they're actually going to reduce the tangle cooldown time from 15 seconds currently down to 12 seconds, but they don't have any plans to really completely overhaul that cooldown. And at this point forward, I'm just going to kind of summarize their answers for your viewing pleasure. Of course, you can read the entirety of the answer on your screen. Moving on from there, for the question, Broodweavers were intended to be the minion masters of Strand, but Threadlings can feel underwhelming in high-end content, especially with the potency of Suspend. Are there any plans to adjust the relationship going forward? Oh my goodness, finally. Dude, I could ask this question, bro. I swear, people overvalue hatchlings so much. Like, yes, okay, it's good in the clickbait build video where it's only tested in a normal difficulty lost sector, take it into a Grandmaster, it can't do any damage! Now, Bungie actually said that in Season 22, they're implementing a sizable increase in Threadling damage against PvE targets, but they're actually reducing the duration and uptime of Suspend sources in PvE. Also, they're going to change the Broodweaver's newest Strand aspect, the Wanderer, to address community feedback. So, Threadling buff, Suspend, nerf next season. Moving on from there, the next question, how does the team feel about the current suite of grenades? Bungie says they want all grenades to feel viable, but for Season 22, they're making some adjustments to the uptime of a few underperforming grenade options. Moving on from there, we get to the next section on weapons. The first question is, can/will hand cannons get a buff, not quite to the Shadowkeep levels, but at least something? Now, Bungie's answer is actually really interesting. First of all, they say they have buffed hand cannons quite a few times, and they're kind of at the place now where they were pre-Shadowkeep. In fact, they do way more body shot damage. But they agree because of the small magazines and the fact that you're reloading all the time, they still need some love in the current meta. So they say, here's what they're actually play testing for a future season. They don't have specifics on when and if these changes will actually come, and if the numbers they present here are going to be the actual numbers when these buffs are introduced. But first of all, they're thinking about increasing the reload speed at the 0 stat by 15%, which is obviously going to scale, and this is just going to mean all hand cannons reload faster. Then for PvE damage, they're increasing the damage against miners red bars by 20% and against orange bars by 75%. Now also, they're thinking about introducing a new hand cannon archetype of heavy burst hand cannons. They said that they've changed the Warden's Law legendary hand cannon to be the first member of the new subfamily heavy burst hand cannons. This fires a 2-round burst and is overall much more satisfying to use than the previous version, while still benefiting from some of the unique properties of the original. So a new hand cannon archetype would be so cool, especially since they removed, the 150 archetype. We definitely need another one. Moving on from there, the next question is, kinetic weapons seem to be falling behind as builds get more intricate. Are there any plans or ideas to make them more interesting to help integrate them into builds? Now, Bungie says that they have noticed this, and to compensate have increased their damage versus unshielded enemies and added the kinetic tremors perk, which is absolutely quite good, but they say we actually have something planned for a Year of the Final Shape timeline that may make them a little bit more unique. Then say, but maybe it's time for a kinetic subclass? Probably not, though. Moving on from there, the next question is, How's the team feeling about the current state of glaives? What about the exotics? They say we've got a substantial glaive tuning pass coming in a future season. Currently, this is season 23, so that's going to be kind of like the winter season, aiming to make them more satisfying to use, particularly in PvP. And they also say that this tuning pass will make some major changes to the exotic glaives specifically. Now, moving on from there, the next question is, how do you determine what gets nerfed and what gets buffed? Do those parameters change over the season? Now, funny enough, Bungie's reply is just to comment on the persistent Bungie balances based on usage narrative. That's not the case. And then they go into all the reasons behind why they actually balance things. So first of all, they have internal feedback from playtesting. They say designers have about 10 plus hours of playtests a week, and they carve out some time to fire up raids and trials every single week. Also, for live feedback sources from players' weapon usage, typically we look at usage by owners, so not to miss what's going on with low ownership weapons. They also have weapon effectiveness, so they look at kills per time equipped and stuff like that. They have design analysis of the implementation of a weapon, looking through weapon perks and data. If they see something wrong, they pull together a list of weapons and they'll go and identify what's contributing to these issues. They say in some cases it's a specific perk combo or the overall weapon type rather than a single weapon or lack of competition. And then they also say, yes, some of the logic for which weapons get attention changes depending on how we focus on the season. If we have high representation of a weapon type in the seasonal artifact, we're shipping several new or reprised weapons of a specific type. That's going to go into, why some weapons might be highly used or very powerful. So overall, undoubtedly, I'm sure they don't just look at a usage chart and then say, oh, this is overpowered, right? But Bungie, you also often, to justify nerfs, have put out the usage charts, right? So obviously that's where that came from. And it's not always a bad idea. Often if something is clearly overpowered, the usage rates are going to be off the chart. So it does make sense sometimes to nerf based on usage. Overall, I think that, they're trying to justify how they make these decisions, but often they make decisions that befuddle the community, such as the Starfire Protocol. Yes, it was obviously overpowered and extremely powerful, but why did they have to absolutely butcher it? They went from 20% to 2.5% in terms of ability energy back from getting this weapon damage. Why not just having it or even making it 5%? Having such a heavy-handed approach seems to be often what upsets the community. Next question, however, is any further exotic tuning planned for the future, and what's the thought process behind those planned changes? So they actually say we've just shipped Season 21, Season 22 is complete, Season 23 is in full production, and the final shape is entering early production. There's a small set of changes to exotic weapons coming in Season 22 next season that we've been playtesting for the last few months, including the long-awaited PvP nerf to the Le Monarch, a buff to the Touch of Malice, and a couple of minor changes to other exotics, and some tweaks to legendary perks such as Bipod, Shoot to Loot, and Under Over. And the whole zoom to damage fall off, big normalization thing, and the Sword Guard rework are also coming in Season 22, and of course that'll affect a lot of exotic weapons. In fact, they also say that in Season 22 they're making an exotic catalyst for an older exotic weapon that's been heavily requested, and they say it's one of the most complex catalysts we've ever made. And they end by saying the process for exotic tuning is looking at pain points around over or underperforming weapons, and honestly just looking at the 20 least used exotic weapons, we poke at that list every season. And I'm okay with that explanation. Moving on from there, the next section is exotic armor and build crafting. The question is, my favorite exotic armor could use a buff. Any plans to continue balancing legacy exotic armor? And Bungie's answer is basically, yeah, they're continually balancing exotic armor, and you can look forward to the next batch of changes next season. The next question is, can you explain the recent Stompies change? Oh boy. And look, you can read this for yourself. Basically, they talk about neutral game being very powerful, which it absolutely was. I think the bigger question is, does neutral game trump, massive spikes in power that other exotics provide that are arguably way better than the Stompies, but again, they don't have the neutral game. Often the exotic is doing literally nothing until you put together, a certain plan or build around that exotic. Moving on from there, guys, the next question: are there any plans for more exotic armor interaction with exotic weapons like Necrotic Grip has with the Weapons of Sorrow? They say, we feel these special connections between exotics are best kept rare and a little bit hidden. That being said, we'd like to add more, especially for hunters and titans, so keep an eye out in the future. That's cool. Moving on from there, will we ever see any of the pre-Lightfall armor mods come back? And they say that they're kind of paying attention to how the armor system is working. The goal overall was to make the armor mods more straightforward and approachable, but they do say they want to experiment with fun and novel ways to interact with Orbs of Power Armor Charge and other armor mod systems, and plan to do so via the seasonal artifact. I really don't like this answer. I think Bungie is completely ignoring adding these lasting changes to build crafting in favor of just seasonal artifact, seasonal artifact. The seasonal artifact goes away. I want more mods that I have forever, that I can use a build and create a build outside of what the seasonal artifact is telling me to do. So that's just my opinion. Moving on from there, some miscellaneous questions, guys. Can we favorite shaders soon? And they do say the UI UX team popping up here to answer this one. We're hesitant to talk too much about complex features that aren't far enough along, but they're going to be sharing some new info on new features on this vein real soon. Awesome. Then, are there any details or confirmations regarding HUD/UI updates that were previously mentioned? We'll talk more about this closer to the final shape. Whew. Massive amount of information we just went over, but obviously you gotta give some props to Bungie for coming in here and answering a lot of those questions, giving us a look under the hood. That's fantastic. Even if I disagree with Bungie on certain things, I'm very happy they took the time to answer community feedback and questions. Moving on from there, guys, Iron Banner is going to return next week for the second time in Season of the Deep. And there's a sweet new emblem up for grabs. You can see it right here. So definitely hop in there with the weekly reset and get your Iron Banner on. Now, they do say round 2 of Iron Banner will be the Eruption game mode, and I know a lot of people like that one, so there you go. And then, guys, the last thing in the TWAB is that Bungie revealed the winners of the Destiny 2 fashion competition, as well as like the PlayStation crossover art competition. And you can see all their Twitter posts within the TWAB itself, which of course is linked in the description of this video if you're interested. And so, guys, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.